1877 fue cuando Edison inventó el fonógrafo, un aparato que utilizaba cilindros de cera para uso comercial. En el 1900 comenzaron las máquinas de tocar discos. Un mundo increíble que no conocemos y que tuve el privilegio de observar a primera mano gracias a mi amigo Robert DiLutis, clarinetista. Fue clarinetista de la Orquesta Sinfónica de Rochester y ahora es profesor de clarinete en la Universidad de Maryland en College Park. Y da la casualidad de que tuve la oportunidad de estar allí hace unas semanas mientras di cursos de música en la universidad. Así que ¿por qué no visitar a mi gran amigo Robert DiLutis, con quien compartí por muchos años en la escuela Juilliard School? De hecho, Robert, John Falcón y yo fuimos parte de un trío que se llamaba Spontaneous Winds. Y pues nada, tocamos nuestro recital de debut en Carnegie Hall, pero el tiempo nos esparció. John está ahora en España, en Asturias, y pues yo estoy en Nueva York, y Robert ahora de maestro en Maryland. Y mientras vemos este video, que fue muy improvisado, de hecho, yo no sabía que iba a poder filmarlo, así que solamente lo hice con mi teléfono, pero creo que provoca un poco el pensamiento, simplemente el hecho de que son más de 100 años desde que se hizo la primera grabación, y hoy día la gente joven escucha música a través de una bocina por Bluetooth, y yo me pregunto si eso suena mejor que lo que tú vas a escuchar ahora mismo, porque el sentido de la presencia que tenían estos aparatos, estamos hablando de aparatos que usaban cuerda, no tenían nada eléctrico, era todo mecánico. Y me parece fascinante como 100 años y sí hemos avanzado mucho, pero hay cosas que no sé. Quiero que me digas tú tu opinión. ¿Qué te parece? Si te impresiona escuchar un disco 78 o no, si te parece una cosa muy anticuada y piensas que es una pérdida de tiempo. Me gustaría saber tu opinión. A propósito, puedes comprar los discos de Robert, como este que estamos escuchando, en su página de readmachine.com. Robert hace también máquinas para clarinetes, para hacer cañas de clarinete. Te pongo en la descripción el enlace donde puedes comprar este disco de Mozart. También tiene otros compact discs que puedes conseguir en la página de Robert DiLutis, en la página de readmachine.com. Gracias por ver este video y por favor no dejes de dejar tus comentarios y suscríbete si no lo has hecho anteriormente. Rob, so how long have we known each other?
Oh, way too long. What, 1989,
88?
Yeah, in 1989 we ended up at Juilliard together.
Yes.
But I think I knew who you were because I had met John Falcone
Before we met.
and he had told me about you. That
Okay.
when we went to Juilliard in a few years, you were going to be there. He knew it already.
He could see the future.
He could see it. So.
And then we had a notorious trio.
That's right.
The
Spontaneous
Trio.
Winds. That's
Yes,
right.
Spontaneous Winds. We did our recital in Carnegie Hall.
That's right. Our
In the Wild
debut.
Hall. Our
And it
debut.
And it was awesome.
Yes, and everything after that was down.
That's the way it works. And now we've gone down into my basement.
Yes.
Speaking of down.
And now we're both into mono.
Mono.
But
I'm way more into a mono than you are. In
Yes.
a weird kind of way.
You are the anthropologist
That's
of the
right.
mono. You know everything about the beginning of sound, not just mono. This is where it all started. So tell me, what do you have here? This is an Edison.
This is an Edison machine. that's been restored.
What did they call this in their day? It's not a Victrola. It's
a phonograph. Well, this would have been called a cylinder player or a Victrola. A Victrola was kind of a common word that started, but...
well, which was the first thing that came out? This.
This was first.
Okay.
But almost simultaneously, Berliner came out with the small discs.
Okay.
The 5-inch disc.
Emil Berliner from Germany.
Yes.
So they came before Edison.
Well, that's what Edison spent most of his life doing, was arguing this in court to decide who really should be the rightful owner to the patent of inventing sound. So I guess in the US Edison won, and in Europe Berliner won out. So that's why you don't see a lot of those records and machines in this country. But this machine early on would have played for 2 minutes only. So you could squeeze 2 minutes of music or 2 minutes of talking. And it was pretty common for people to record posterity recordings, they called them. So artists would just come into a studio and just record themselves one time, directly onto the disc or directly onto the cylinder. And so these cylinders didn't have a lot of space for anything, so they would print the name of the piece along the edge here. This one, for example, says Zampa Overture.
Oh, it's like a lens, sort of, like
Zampa Overture Band. That's it.
And you wouldn't even know, you have to really research it.
Now sometimes the cover that they came in may have said more details, but not always. Edison did like to put his name and his face on everything.
Really?
More than
the artist.
Yeah, I think this, and then someone would just scribble on the end what this was. And you may have a little book that you would, and you've probably seen that for record collectors. Some of the old timers had little books, and they would have their records in the books.
Oh yeah, like an album.
An album with a cover, the table of content in the beginning.
Because when you buy the record, it just came like a little piece of paper. It didn't have a jacket.
Right, nothing, just a record with a sleeve.
I have a few of those. Yeah, I have a book that has records in it.
So, you want to hear a little of this? Then we.
Sure.
This is going to be just a little clarinet piece, I believe. Let's see if it works.
Clarinet solo Calvatina from Robert DiLutis, played by Mr. William Tucson in the Sun Record.
So this called Zampa.
This is William Tucson playing a solo. He was Edison's favorite clarinetist.
I already know what you think of him.
Not the greatest sound.
What are we talking, 1900?
This is 1902, 1901. And just remember, the clarinet player would have to aim his clarinet into the bell. So one bell here and one bell here. So, just for example, this is a brass horn. This was pretty common. But if you wanted to have a party or you wanted to play for your friends, you would get a concert horn or a larger horn like this. These were sometimes called morning glory horns, and they would attach onto the Edison machines, and we'll continue on.
Is this made out of metal?
This is metal as well.
Okay. I can hear a little more body in the clarinet, a little fuller sound.
Yeah, and so if I'm going to record, I will play into this. But they were decorated often, hand painted, and you can still find them for sale. Always not such great shape, but it depends on how much you'd like to pay.
I've been offered a couple of Victrolas in the past, and I always say no. Like,
Yeah.
people don't want to keep them.
They take a lot of time
Yeah.
and space to maintain them,
Yeah.
to have the space. But so my interest in this was not just, I just heard that clarinet player. I'm a clarinet player. So what would I sound like if I was back in the early 1900s recording myself? Would I sound just like that guy? Or was that the recording equipment? Or was that him? And so I've been, for the past few years, experimenting with trying to create my own recordings. And there are several guys that are still making wax cylinders. This particular cylinder is from England. There's one gentleman in England making these, and there's no grooves on that yet.
So that's a blank. It's like buying a blank cassette.
That's right. This
Sort
is a
of.
blank. And you place it on the machine, and then you have to change the reproducer, which is the
It's like the needle or something.
needle and the stylus. You would change this with the... I can edit all this together. So here, this is a recorder stylus
Okay.
that actually does the opposite of the
Of the playback.
player. And you can see the way they mount in the machine. It's opposite. One is carving grooves and one is rolling over the grooves.
I see.
So that's the trick to this method. So we place the recorder.
And so you're also, you're interested in the history of the recordings, not the machines. It's a means to an end. You just want to be able to hear these very old recordings, clarinet players, orchestras, singers.
That's right. And my interest is historical clarinetists. That's what I focus on. So who played clarinet in the Sousa band? Who played clarinet in the Met in 1905? What did they sound like? Are there any recordings that exist of them? Almost every member of the John Philip Sousa band made solo recordings. But we don't listen to them. We don't remember what they sound like. And, you hear a lot of people say musicians nowadays are so much better than they used to be.
Right.
Well, to a degree, certain things have improved, but there were some fantastic
But then when
players.
you hear some of these things, you're like, oh my God, we were wrong.
Yeah, and so you just never know what you're going to hear.
And I have to say, I was so impressed when I heard your Victor machine upstairs with that mahogany horn. I was excited. I was elated to hear the sound that came out of that thing. I can only imagine what people felt, 100 years ago, how they felt when they heard that for the first time.
And we will go up there and we will do what Edison called he called them sound tests. We'll go up and do one.
So before the cylinder, was there anything else? Is this the first format to record?
There were early experiments that proved to not be very practical, and some were done on wire, some were done on tin foil, and so you'll see all types of experiments happening, different types of materials. I think they tried wood, they tried everything to try to see what could hold sound. They used film, they tried everything, but they wanted to come up with something that could be used at home, and it would have a practical application, just like later on the Kodak company did with George Eastman. So all these cylinders, from wax to hard plastics, they have to be treated with care or they'll melt. Wax can melt.
Oh, that's right.
And then later on we moved into some of the shellacs, and I think that's a very interesting part of the recording history. Most people think of records, a lot of guys will say, play me some shellac, and you know what they mean. But shellac is actually just from a material that comes from the shellac bug.
From a bug, yeah.
And it's the poop of the shellac
Yeah.
bug. And it's really kind of gross if you think about it. But
Oh, yeah.
they made a process of getting a really hard material. And we actually use that same shellac in the applications for musical instruments of applying corks
Yes.
and pads. And
Instead of glue, you use
Yeah.
shellac. It's more stable, I guess.
yeah, and it has a very easy way of maneuvering the pad and floating it into position. So very interesting stuff.
And so there was also wire. People could buy a wire recorder, or was that more of a professional? Or
I think that was just an experimental type thing. When I lived in Rochester, I was able to connect with Tim Fabrizio, who's like a world authority on the Victrolas, and he restores them. And actually, I bought some of my first machines from him, and he has gone back and done some of the earliest, research on this, and actually came to an event I was hosting, and we did a sound test where we turned the lights out in a room in a mansion, and we had a violinist play a solo, and then we had the record of the same solo. And Edison's whole thing was you couldn't tell the difference between the recording and the real thing.
And they did that in the first days. And people had trouble identifying because they were so excited. They were so confused. They never heard recorded sound.
Yeah, so which one was live? And at a distance, with the lights out, you couldn't tell.
I find that hard to believe, but I guess it's a factor of not believing that something could be recorded.
Yeah, we're so used to it now. I mean,
right.
The first time I recorded myself on a cylinder, I was like, ooh, that doesn't sound like I thought it was going to sound like. But it's all the guys that ran these machines, just like in the record, era, the person that ran this machine was specific to that machine. He knew how to make that machine sound good. It was like his musical instrument. It
was like a watchmaker, or a luthier who made instruments.
He knew what speed to run it at, and some of these machines, just like early cameras, had to be run by hand. It wasn't until 1925 when we started to have electric machines.
When Edison invented not Tesla,
That's
Edison.
Right. and that was when things became a little more standardized. But talk about standardization. Every cylinder plays slightly different speed. Everything plays.
Because it was recorded. It's like the cassette. It was recorded on different machines, and so
different operators thought that 70. We hear 78. Some guys ran at 80. Some companies ran at 90. Some ran at 65. It just depended.
Is it because they wanted to get to fit more stuff, or the quality of the sound, or the volume?
I think that it was number one, economics, like you said. Fit the music. If you play it just a little bit faster and you run the record just a little bit slower, we can fit everything on there. There's the famous story of Stravinsky's Rite of Spring that was recorded for 78. And it didn't fit properly on the sides of the set of CDs. So the producer running the machine said, could you play that movement a little faster? So you can't go by the interpretation sometimes on these. It's more for the enjoyment of the music.
And that's what always got us in trouble with all the mediums. Like the record, the 33s, they had to make them so you could fit Beethoven 9 or whatever, or operas in as few records as possible, and so they have to make the groove smaller, so the quality is compromised. Same with the CD, they had to make the CD so Karajan could, conduct the ninth, Beethoven ninth, and they had to lower the quality a little bit.
It's interesting because a box of 78 records, your standard 16 by 16 box weighs 65 pounds.
Yeah.
When it has 78 records in it. One Mahler symphony weighs 10 pounds. So how many Mahler symphonies do you want to buy if they weigh 10 pounds each?
And everything has to end with the chord. After
right.
like 3 or 4 minutes. How long can you play it for? 4-5 minutes?
The early records, the
78s
are going to be about 4 minutes. Yeah.
And then it ends on a chord, and then they have to change the record and
flip it over. Well, and early recordings as well that we'll listen, maybe something upstairs of the Philadelphia or the Boston Symphony maybe. They played really fast, but they also couldn't use certain instruments. You couldn't hit the timpani or it would distort
Of course, the modulation of the groove.
Stokowski was famous for substituting the sousaphone for the timpani. So in my mind, I don't feel like those instruments are similar at all, but the recording equipment would hear the sousaphone sound as a boom.
Ah,
And that's all they really wanted was a boom. They didn't really
interesting.
hear about the quality of what it was. So
I have some 78s that are one-sided only. Why is that?
I always laughed because they didn't have the technology yet to do it. No one had thought of doing two sides.
Oh, it's not because it was for some changers or...
No, and on the bottom of those you'll find a label. Sometimes it has information about the record. Other times it's just information about the company, a little ad.
Oh.
So yeah, it wasn't until the 1920s that sort of went away and it became a two-sided thing.
Oh, I wonder how valuable or not the records I have are.
I find most 78s aren't very valuable to most people except me.
It's true. It's like opera. There's nothing opera that's valuable in records. Very little. So let's go check out your system upstairs. So here we are, Rob. What is this?
This is a Victor 4, which is these are made from about 1906 to into the 1920s. This particular one is from 1924, same age as our house that we're in. So that's
Great.
So this
It
house
matches.
would have had this kind of music, which is kind of amazing, right?
Amazing.
There
Incredible.
would have been no electric stereo in here, not until after 25. So this is
Right.
pre-electric. It's wind up. It has a double motor inside, so two springs. That once one spring is wound, the other one engages, and they both unwind to power the record. The whole benefit to that was that you could play more records without having to wind the machine, and that you paid extra for.
Oh,
You also paid extra for the deluxe mahogany horn, and this is the large one, so it was an extra
Wow.
loud.
and those are probably hard to find in good shape.
Very hard to find. This I bought from someone online who didn't really know what it was.
Okay.
And sent it to me in a box. It was wrapped in carpet, and I restored the machine back to some original condition.
Now the machine is only that top part.
Only this. This is a different machine down here.
That's from a Victrola or
It's
something.
another Victrola here, which
Right.
I don't use that often because I prefer the sound from this. It's much more acoustically correct.
Ah,
You
because
can-
that one, the sound went through the drawers, or
This has the actual recording goes down. This one
Oh.
goes up into the room. So,
So
this
this-
box, the horn, it doesn't actually vibrate as much. It's kind of trapped in a box.
okay.
So this is free to vibrate with the air. And so when you listen to orchestras or you listen to soloists, you can feel the air vibrating if you stand close enough.
Wow.
Violin especially, but we're not going to listen to any violin. We're going to listen to some orchestra, and we're going to do some bassoon, and we're going to do some clarinet.
Okay. But it's like the modern concept of horns too. You go to a movie theater and they use horns too, even though
Yeah.
they're modern speakers. The horns
Yeah,
work
you've seen
with
it.
compression.
You've seen it. Yeah, it really does amplify. So this machine, we're going to play with a soft needle, which the needles that you could purchase for these machines came in soft, medium, and hard,
Okay.
or soft, medium, loud, and loud. So they're thicker, they get bigger and more bulky to vibrate more sound. So this is a recording from 1917 of the Boston Symphony
Wow.
with Carl Muck conducting. The finale from the Tchaikovsky Symphony, Fourth Symphony.
Oh wait, virtuosic playing
We'll see.
and fast. Oh, it's already in the middle of the movement.
Yeah, we get that halfway point. This machine has a speed control here,
Like a pitch control.
so I can slow it down a little bit.
And it's like a brake, it's friction based. playing here right now?
About 20.
20? That's a lot.
All squeezed in a small room.
Yeah. Cymbals, because that would also throw the. What was used for percussion? The pizzicato?
Yes.
That bam, that's what I hear. It says pizzicato.
Yes. Lots of times the music would have cuts to fit it onto the record.
Right. Looks like it's gonna make it to the end. I was thinking that we're gonna end the record.
I think it will.
Oh. Who would be the other player there?
1917, I'm not sure.
Could be Gillet. Is that trombone?
Way back from the speaker in the other room.
No dynamics.
And they would have done several recordings of this
Oh.
in one session to have enough pressings to make the copies.
Because it won't be just one other. So they Si può. I'll take a video later of this. There's also an RCA book that talks about the history of it,
Yes.
which I don't have. Sounds great.
You can feel the vibrations.
distortion.
It's like he's right here.
But it doesn't clip because there's nothing to clip.
That's right.
There's no electronics, so it's an acoustical event.
That's right.
Just like a real singer.
Yeah. It was recorded in the way that it's being reproduced. Let's see if
All right, let's hear it.
bassoon.
Let's hear the bassoon.
Virtuoso bassoon.
Where's John when you need him?
That's right. On a fiber needle. You can already tell the sound is different.
What piece is this? Just some.
Little,
Popular.
piece, yeah.
And do you know who the bassoonist was?
Carl Bergwald. I looked him up, but not a lot of information about him. But interesting though, let's do a comparison. And let's change the needle to something a little bit different. And let's go with a loud needle. And see if you can hear a difference in how the bassoon sounds.
That's louder.
Totally different.
Oh yeah.
And it's just like what we talked about with modern equipment. How
Yeah.
that affects how the records sound.
Yeah.
Suddenly the bassoon is out in front.
It's like you got a new amplifier.
Yeah.
I kind of like this. Okay, so what are you going to play now?
This is going to be The Whistler and His Dog with Arthur Pryor conducting.
Is this a real orchestra or a band?
This is the Arthur Pryor Band, which was made up of many of
That was his master's dog.
That's right. So this type of, thematic, theatrical sort of performances led a lot of vaudeville artists to want to record. And one of the most famous vaudeville artists was Rudy Wiedoff on his saxophone. And he would record and write and play virtuoso pieces on the saxophone. He was known for triple tonguing, double tonguing, circular breathing. He could do it
And now this was legit saxophone music or also
this was sort of
Dixieland or
it
what?
was a vaudeville mixed with ragtime, mixed with
So like theatrical, like you
yeah,
said.
Yeah. So, but we'll switch over to this other machine for this one.
Okay.
So this is the called the Victor R model, and this machine would have been built in around 1903. One of the earlier machines, and you'll notice the difference. Now we have the metal horn. Wooden horns really weren't popular yet, and the machine had a mechanism where the arm would just float like this on its own. Seems a little scary, but that's how
Yeah.
we did it.
And is that a gauge to change the weight, or no? That's just the needle.
Yeah, and there's no gauge for any weight. Everything was designed in the machine shop to be the right weight.
I see.
So, nowadays we measure the exact amount of ounces and
Yeah.
to 0.00, and this is just like drop the heavy piece of metal on the record.
Does this also have a replaceable needle?
Yes, same thing. The reproducer here.
And you have a record clamp.
Yes,
Those are popular with audiophiles.
That was very popular back then because the records, there's a lot of friction, and sometimes the record would slip.
It would drag or something.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
And so this is a piece Rudy Wiedoff wrote called Saxima.
Now, is this similar to a Emil Berliner machine?
Yeah, it's very similar, almost identical.
Is it like a ripoff?
I think so.
Wow. Interesting rhythm.
You heard it all. It's all jazzy. Free jazz, though.
And he found time to have vibrato.
And this song was. Always one take. There's no restarting on these.
Wow.
From things I've read, the recording engineers were really angry if you had to restart because they had to throw away material. So you got to record maybe 3 or 4 times and you'd use them all.
So, Robert, I love mono, you love mono, the original source of mono. And I wonder, today people are listening on these Bluetooth speakers and they only buy one speaker. So I have a feeling that since everyone is buying vinyl now and vinyl is so expensive, the only way is the resurgence of mono, because right now you can go to a thrift shop and buy mono for $1. If equipment manufacturers would make some kind of mono equipment to reproduce these records, it would be a hit. I mean, where do you see mono going?
Yeah, well, you're on the forefront, and I agree with everything you said. I think that people have been listening to mono for the past 15, 20 years and didn't even realize that little speaker coming out of their computer was mono, or that they weren't really set up with the right equipment to hear things being played in a stereo effect. And I guess why were people attracted to stereo? Why did people end up going to quadraphonic? Well, they wanted a better experience. They wanted to be surrounded by the music. If you don't want to be surrounded by the music, if you just want the music in your room, you don't really need stereo. It served a purpose.
Well,
this fills up the whole house, this sound.
Well, the manufacturers, they could sell more speakers
That's
if you
true.
had stereo.
And with quadraphonic, they should have had octatonic.
Well, now they have,
Now you
7.1 or whatever.
Yeah, you
8.
can have Bluetooth speakers all over your home, but wherever you're near, you're only having one, really
Yeah.
one mono sound. So I think you're right. I think there may be a resurgence, and there has been in obviously in LP recordings. 78's not quite as much, but in LPs. But to make the distinction between stereo and mono has been a real revelation. So I think, thanks to you partly for that. So I think
I don't know, but
for many people, I think this is going to be a really great endeavor to really go back and listen to those historic recordings in the true way that they were meant to be played, which is in mono on
Yes.
one speaker, and to really hear the true balance of those recordings. So
yeah, you have that presence that you cannot get on stereo, even if you're listening to a mono record with 2 speakers. You're not gonna feel that.
yeah, and
Immediacy.
we even heard the differences here with different needles
Yeah.
to change the balance of just what's coming out of a Victrola. So I'm hopeful more
Yeah.
people in
Well,
the history.
thanks so much, Rob. This was fantastic, and it's great to see you again. And let's hope we meet again sometime.
Yes, in New York.
Yes, come hear my mono setup.
That's right, I will.
Tell me what you think.
Thank
All
you.
right.
So this is a box that contains several different types of needles. These are medium volume needles. These are loud needles. And what we have on here is a soft needle. So
Oh.
we're gonna play this record.
Soft is for volume, but also
soft
for
as
sound
in-
quality.
Just soft as in volume.
Oh,
The general way to control the volume in a Victrola was either through the needle or by putting a sock in the bell. And that's sort of the expression, put a sock in it.
I
You roll
see.
the sock and put it in the bell. This is
Oh.
a mahogany bell. That's
Oh.
made, so it's wood. And so you really get a sense of the vibrations.
Nice. Who make this? Is it RCA or
This is a Victor.
Victor? And you can make it louder by opening the doors.
This is just sitting on another one.
It's great playing too. Who's playing this?
Sousa.
Of course. Ooh, dynamics.
You can play a march with character.
Yes.
The cabinet below is where you store your records.
What is that one for?
This is a different unit here.
Because that was for making it louder.
No.
No?
But for the older ones.
Yeah, for the older one.
So this would be the horn for this unit. And then you would control with the doors, right?
The repeat. Wow.
So this machine's from 1924.
Wow.
This machine is from 1906.
So these were the first ones then.
This was very early, right after Berliner had created his. This was about the same time Victor came out with this same machine.
That's the company that makes it direct to this, Emil Berliner.
Yes,
That's the
same.
name. Yeah.
And Berliner was doing these really small 5 and 6 inch records. You can see how small the disc is.
Hmm.
Those records are super valuable. They run in the $200 to $500 range for those records. I don't have any.
On eBay.
Yeah, and that's where my teacher, Bill Blaney, he buys them on there.
Mhm.
This was Patty was at an estate sale and saw this up on a shelf in some house about a mile away, and she sent me a picture, and it was all green, and this horn was smashed.
Oh.
And the parts were missed. This was missing, and so I went online, and there's a lot of Victrola
Yeah.
experts, and they have rooms full of the pieces. But I restored the horn just by with a hammer,
Hammering it.
smashing and rolling out and bought this. This corner was the turn here was missing, so someone was able to send me this turn, and I put it all back together.
It looks beautiful.
So this was $45, but they're valued around $5,000 now.
Oh boy.
Isn't that crazy?
Amazing.
When it's working like this, but you'll see the top is metal.
Mhm.
The arm. Look at the detail work here on the arm.
Oh yeah. Serpentine.
Mm-hmm.
I have some 78s, but I'll have to consult with you, see if they're any good. Thank you, Robert.
You're welcome.
Y bien, ¿qué te parece? Increíble, ¿verdad? Hace más de 100 años ya estábamos traqueteando con esto, ya estábamos cacharreando. Y hay gente como Robert que todavía mantiene esa tradición viva y que todavía nos puede ayudar a entender nuestro pasado como audiófilos. ¿Hemos progresado mucho? Si estamos escuchando música en casa con una bocinita Bluetooth, como la Bose, por ejemplo, que yo compré, ¿es tanto mejor eso que lo que tú acabas de escuchar? Déjame saber en tus comentarios. Gracias.